This is a little post about safety and compassion. Many of us on the path of personal spiritual growth at some point find that when we look at the society, we see a lot of things that are deeply upsetting. Of course, that's true for everyone, but this is particularly true for those on the path. We look and we see a lot of the society with poor values, judgments, beliefs, and when I say poor, I mean things that will create self-limitation, anger, frustration, hatred, conflict, things that tend to divide people and keep them even at war with themselves, and of course then with other people. And I believe that many of us have the experience that when we really look into ourselves, we find two things. On the one hand, we may find that we feel personally threatened, both directly and indirectly. And on the other hand, we very often find that we really wish we could help in some way. We want to help, and once you get on this path, you realize that part of it is helping others, being of service. So the first part about feeling personally threatened, my experience, I ultimately believe in a benevolent great spirit and a benevolent universe. And of course, this is completely at odds with what we see, and so there are a lot of questions about how that can be, and I'm not going to go into all that right now. But I do find that ultimately that is what I believe. And so the answer seems to come down to trusting spirit, that spirit knows what it's doing. I have a reincarnationist view of life, that we chose when to manifest and how to manifest. And of course, people are going to point out that, well, why would you manifest? Is that horrible life or that? I don't know. And I acknowledge that at a certain point, as a limited human being, there are things that I look and I go, how can this be? But when you do enough meditating, or my experience when I meditate or do all these other things, you get a sense of, can I call it, higher truths. So the answer to feeling personally threatened ultimately seems to be do what you can do in a prudent manner to take care of yourself, which, for instance, eating organic food rather than a lot of the food that's out there. I'll just say that the standard American diet, the initials are SAD, SAD, and it's a factory for illness. So things like that. And on the other hand, taking the long-term view that we chose to be here in this life, in this set of circumstances, and that Spirit knows what it's doing, and that while we do the best we can, ultimately we are Spirit and not just our very vulnerable human bodies subject to so many problems. So then the second question is, how can we help? There's a phrase in the Bible, which I hesitate to quote. It says, "Do not cast your pearls before swine, lest they turn on you and trample you," or something to that effect. Many people are actively resistant to hearing well-meant and probably accurate words of advice. They're not interested at best. They're actively resistant at worst. While at worst, they get very hostile, and there's a long history of people being beheaded and burned at the stake and very other nasty things. So the question is, how can we help? And not in a big dramatic sense here, but just in our own limited lives with our set of friends and just the people we encounter. And I think a very important answer is not to be pushing this stuff. If it seems like it's called for, or there's an opening, the person is receptive, go ahead, offer whatever pearls of wisdom we might have or suggestions. But otherwise, maybe it's more about just raising your own vibration, and so ideally it raises the vibrations of those you come in contact with. I realize that's a very woo statement, but I believe it's true. I will add to this that I am just a struggling seeker myself. I do not claim to have any great wisdom or higher knowledge. If I did, I probably wouldn't be talking into this phone and posting this on a podcast. I'd probably be meditating up on a mountain somewhere, just sending energy to troubled areas. You heard kind of how I view things right there. So, main points, if we're really honest with ourselves, and one of the things about being on personal and spiritual path is being really honest with yourself. And what that means is objectively as you can, and honestly evaluating your strengths, your weaknesses, observing how your own mind works, not with false modesty about diminishing your gifts, not with false modesty about exaggerating your flaws, just clearly, simply going, okay, I have this in me, I have this in me, and sounds like an email just came in. And so being really honest with yourself is almost the key step on the path. Be very honest, and don't exaggerate your flaws. Don't diminish your strengths. Just try and look at it as if someone 40 feet off is looking at it, who has no attachment to you whatsoever. They're just saying, oh, yeah, this, that, and observing your own thoughts and emotions. So this is starting to turn into a big ramble. So the bottom line is safety and compassion. Many of us find ourselves in the situation where, on the one hand, we feel threatened by all the stuff going on, including the stuff in the air and the ground and the food and the EMFs and the hostility and the anger and the hatred and the crime and everything else. And on the other hand, we also find ourselves really wanting to help in some way. And so then the question becomes, how do we, I don't want to say reconcile those two, but do the best we can to feel safe ourselves, because we do want to feel safe. And how do we do that without just hiding in a hole somewhere, which ultimately isn't safe anyway? And then on the other hand, what is the best way for us to share and serve with whatever degree of insight we may have? And that includes insight into, like, don't eat that, eat that. Just doesn't have to be anything terribly woo-woo. Okay, long rambling post. Thank you for listening. Over and out.